around the theme of forgiveness, which I will explain a little bit later. So, serialized Rwanda. Rwanda, as we know today, since the year 1994 has been made known on a global scale because of the genocide. It is the sixth most notorious genocide in the world, and we would consider that as the worst of Rwanda's history so far, as a lot of people have suffered because of that. With like some statistics, 90 people were killed every 15 minutes for 100 days in Rwanda. And that gives the amount of about 1 million people which passed away or died in that period of genocide. And some people even estimate up to 2 million people have died up to now. And this we would consider would be the worst of Rwanda. This horror story still remains in the minds of people today. Rwanda is still slowly healing. The process isn't complete. I mean, they're still suffering a lot of repercussions from the genocide that took place. But many people are continuing this effort to continue to restore Rwanda. So the government, they are making good effort, especially in how clean Rwanda is. It's a small thing, but it goes a long way. And like women empowerment, for example, and for our project deals with the aspect of architecture and how architecture restores a nation. How architecture can possibly heal Rwanda to become a better place. So we asked ourselves some questions. How does architecture play a role in restoring a nation? How do we use the physical to cure, not just the physical, but the metaphysical as well? What does it take to bring about the reconciliation of a people, of the Tutsis and the Hutus? Can something broken be fixed? Then we move on. This is what Rwanda has been doing very, very well since even before the genocide and continuing even after the genocide. 4 out of 5 people in Rwanda are involved in agriculture. 90% of Rwanda's economy right now is due to agriculture, and this is definitely the object or the activity that is sustaining Rwanda, and it's really amazing. For example, the amount of coffee that's produced today is 14 million tons compared in the year 2000, compared to 40 years ago where it was only 20,000 tons. So the economy has been really, agriculture has really contributed to the economy despite everything that has happened. So beyond just the economy, the side of agriculture that improves a nation's economy, we saw that agriculture also gave dignity to the people and acted as a tool for social reconciliation. As before, long ago, history tells us that the Hutus and the Tutsis were workers together in farmlands, and that was very important, and it's very powerful symbolically as well. So modulation, healing Rwanda. I'm going to read out from this sheet of paper if you don't mind, because it's hard to say it out. However, to modulate from two extremes seemed impossible. What brings about transformation of prejudice in order to be reintegrated into the social fabric? What causes excitement and desire to want to contribute to the restoration of the land? What allows people to be confident to participate and contribute in society despite the errors of the past? What allows neighbors to dwell delightfully in a loving and secure community? Despite the fundamental nature of the questions asked, we came to agreement that there must be more than physical improvements that has to take place, but metaphysical resurrection of desire to become rewoven back into the social order of Rwanda. There needs to be a modulation of the spirit. We came to the conclusion that Rwanda needs forgiveness. So I'm just going to define what forgiveness means in the sense of a Christian worldview, because that is the worldview that we are looking at this project from. We think about forgiveness beyond the mere "I'm sorry" between two conflicting parties. More than that, we see forgiveness as a means to restart, because a person's inabilities, unworthiness, wrongdoings are not counted against them. That's number one. Number two, we see forgiveness as something that goes beyond the pardoning of sin, but the reconciliation of relationships. Therefore, it is important for both the perpetrator and the victim, not just the perpetrator himself, to receive forgiveness by both parties. To receive forgiveness, in order that relationships between each other may be restored. Last, we see forgiveness as both instantaneous and a process. Forgiveness does not end at "I am sorry," but begins there. Forgiveness can only be fully realized when an individual is fully reintegrated into the social fabric. Many efforts made by the governing authority in Rwanda to aid the poor, increase economic outflow, and redignify Rwanda can be seen as acts that shout out forgiveness. In the same way, we want our architecture to do the same. We want our architecture to shout out to the people living in Rwanda that you are forgiven, and we want you to be restored back into the social fabric. And we want to do this through agriculture, because that's what Rwanda has been always amazing at doing. We approach these issues two ways. First is the problem of the truth of forgiveness. Not the problem, the point of truth of forgiveness. And the second is how the truth of forgiveness is actualized through architecture. So this is a snapshot of our master plan. As you can see, our master plan. So again, the question asked is, how do we transform the site to become a location that facilitated forgiveness or shouted forgiveness to the people? So we believe that this can be done in two ways. The first way would be the affirmation of the truth of forgiveness through the presence of a church, and the second, the social reintegration of refugees and Rwandan citizens through subsistence farming throughout the site. So just a short introduction of how we came about with this master plan, the forum and the buildings that were involved. Firstly, we looked at how everything was sloping downhill, and we would think that that would be the preferred choice of motion for the people. And therefore, we created streets that lead people downhill, while at the same time giving room for people to move across from one street to another through alleyways. This created a flow that led to a central point at the bottom of the hill, which is obviously the visual center, as well as the intended center for community, which is where we located our church. And then as you can see, there's a lot of blue spaces, and there's like a lot of water. But as you can see in the model over there, that is actually a space whereby it's a water feature that slows down. One of the users of it is to slow down the progression of water throughout the site to avoid soil erosion. Another thing is just, and besides being visually pleasing, it also helps irrigate the farms, the houses, for subsistence farming. So my friend AJ is going to talk about the church and how that the architecture contributes to this concept.
So the church in Kinyinya offers truth about forgiveness, as Tim mentioned, in the Christian worldview. It claims complete forgiveness, freely from God. The believers in Kinyinya can obey Jesus' command when he says to first go and be reconciled to your brother and sister, and then you can go and offer your gift out of joy, because they've been freely forgiven themselves first. And so the church offers, again, this mindset that Tim mentioned about just what real forgiveness is, and learning how to forgive yourselves first, and to be forgiven, and therefore go seek forgiveness among others as well. And so another one of Jesus' teachings that we mentioned in past reviews is this idea of gathering nets of fish, or fishing for men. And so how this this water all gathers in a central location at the bottom of the hill, just like the church attempts to gather the people of the community in this one structure, in this one building, to be a community together. So the church's design itself is pretty simple. Yeah, I can probably, there can probably be maybe 300 or 400, I guess, worshipers at one time in the sanctuary. Yeah, and there's just like pretty simple like lobby area, double height, and then yeah, just like an office and a choir room and storage. Again, somewhat simple layout. And the main access way being from the main road that leads along the site, and kind of going directly onto it. So yeah, you can have the next one. But the materials of the structure are made out of, well, before I get to the sanctuary, the building is connected to the church. So in the last project, I mentioned that, so there are there's like a health clinic and refugee housing, and different buildings connected to the church. Yeah, that are made out of the compressed stabilized earth block that is common in Rwanda. So transitioning from the light wooden bridges to the CSEB, there's kind of this heavy transition then all of a sudden to the basalt stone that is used for the church. And we feel that that is necessary to contrast the building from the rest of the structures. Yeah, because this heavier structure, this more dense church, becomes sort of the rock and the foundation of the community, and really stands out because of that. But because basalt is like very opaque and doesn't allow much light in, we decided to propose the Gabion system, which lets light filter through as well as doesn't necessarily block in all of the sound, because in Rwandan churches, sometimes they can get extremely loud. And so rather than having this crazy echo, it can kind of filter the sound out through filtering the rocks and letting the light and the sound out. Yeah, and then these are just some of the details. I'm not going to explain a ton, but basically just that the roof system, yeah, there's the Gabion rock on the top and the bottom so that it keeps this pure form. Again, symbolic of just like the church being this pure unified form. But in between the two layers, there's the corrugated plastic, which keeps the rain out, and then just the support system, the structure that would hold the span of the roof together, as well as a gutter system, as you can see on the right, that goes. That's tilted one, but it would go through the columns inside the structure that are holding it up. Yeah, so the church becomes a place of unity, which brings these people together, while also becoming a place for reconciliation. Yeah, and the program as well emphasizes this. Again, as I mentioned in the last one, so the different programs, such as the health clinics, community spaces, the refugee housing, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and yeah, the different programs lend to this multi-use, I guess, facility that it's not just the church, but that it is highly connected and integrated with other programs that are supposed to bring health and revitalization to the community. Yeah.
All right. So besides the church, this is another view of the church from the church exterior. looking up to it all. We have housing typologies. Our housing typologies are centered around the program that we want people to farm. Firstly, Rwanda is a very landlocked country, and as explained by our colleagues earlier, there isn't much place to farm if we're going to develop, and just cut down trees. So what our housing typologies emphasize the need for vertical farming and rooftop farming. Type 1 house is rooftop housing, and type 2 house is vertical farms. And they both create unique streetscapes and very powerful motifs along the side. As you can see, the rooftop housing creates that streetscape. Okay, Derek.
So for the type 1, we're trying to think about, how does a person like to live, and we were thinking about, how does normal people live today? You're living around kind of this machine, you're living around this Habeck system. So we want to try to kind of remove that machine kind of driven housing away. So we developed a housing that's very kind of transparent through the vegetation. So the wind or the air can move through the gaps that are provided in between these vegetation modules, and we hope that these vegetation module can actually produce a sort of scent and environment into the housing. So the very time you wake up in the morning, you'll be like smelling very good fresh air, and you'll feel very good. And in that sense, you're forgiving yourself, because you're providing this sort of a good environment too. You're not torturing yourself, I guess. And we hope that this kind of self-sustaining idea can kind of be a very can kind of define the future of Rwanda's urban planning, because we did a lot of research on the import of foods, that whatever they add into the kind of vegetable and food today, and we found it to be very disgusting. So we feel that if they can plant their own foods, it wouldn't be necessarily have to go to the stores and buy the bad stuff that the international community apparently offers. And we also want to kind of make this sort of feel of achievement, and that every time you walk down the street and then you look at your house, you feel like, oh, so today this is what I achieved. I plant this beautiful things that purifies my community, and I am responsible for my community. And that way you're also forgiving yourself, because by you just planting these stuff, you help your community.
Yes, so social reintegration occurs through farming. Work dignifies. Beautiful housing typologies dignify. Hopefully it's beautiful. So the second typology is more on the side of vertical farms. So basically, this housing typology, I wanted this to be a more mixed typology, because having streets that are mixed bring about much more vitality to a neighborhood, as we can see in many big cities. So the bottom floor of this housing unit is more of like a social space where there's like shops and a small people performing on the street. It's a very lively environment, and that also redignifies. Okay, I wouldn't spend too much time on the housing because it's not really about the housing this time. But as you can see, the form of the building accommodates sunlight. It's and so that the farms get most out of the sun. And as you can see, like what Derek said just now, the living skin of the building, whereby plants become the walls of the building, help freshen the air and enrich the environment. Sorry.
Just bring it back to the refugee housing person.
Right, and then the last housing typology will be the refugee housing, which is in the church.
Bring it back one more. So yeah, just quickly, so the refugee housing is connected to the church, but kind of above. I mean, I think it's seen best in the model. But again, there's opportunities to learn to farm together on top of the health center. And the community spaces, can you go forward actually? Yeah, the green, kind of these areas to connect all three levels of the refugee housing through maybe dining or working or different, or youth programs or anything like that. Again, this attempt to just create community, especially among the refugees, those who probably need to learn forgiveness more than most in Rwanda.
Last, about housing, the master plan also supports the idea that refugees will be working amongst the people who own individual housing units, who own farms, and this will in a way promote relationships between the homeowners as well as the people who are not in the land and who are displaced. This will hopefully bring about a lot of interaction between them and ease the reintegration process into society. Last is the bridge, which Derek will talk about.
So we thought a lot about what the bridge should be. At the first time we thought, okay, so since this is about farming, why don't we make it sort of like a small research center where there could be plants kind of placed in, but it seems that when we do that, the sort of interaction is lower because the people that will be in there will just be the researcher, not really the people walking around. And so we changed it to, okay, maybe this could be a culture center or a library where people could go in and read about Rwanda and kind of look at what Rwanda is about, what is Rwandan culture. But we found out that if we want the bridge to be very active, it shouldn't be sort of this quiet activeness that the culture center or the library provides. So we thought about, okay, so why don't we make this sort of an activity space where people can just kind of mingle around and talk around, and so that it becomes a space where people can, and again, enjoy the freshness that's provided by the vegetation, and also a bunch of other activities that a bridge can offer. And one of it is the flea market, and the other one is at the top is very farming oriented. So the concept of bringing this vertical, kind of small vertical farms on these tube-like things is that we can maybe plant things like strawberries or berries, so people walk around, pick a berry, right? And they can enjoy the berry while they perhaps mingle or talk around with their friends. And also these tube-like farming tubes can provide sort of a separation for activities to have instead of just using a complete wall. Because last time we ran into issues that Rwandan people have different churches, so they might not want to go to like one specific church. So maybe having this bridge as sort of an organizable element may be able to have some of the smaller groups to have their own little activity room, but not to do so much as to like completely separate them. And it also served as which I think the first image does better. It also served as a purifying element to the trough below, because we see that we really want to keep it as sort of this vegetation oriented and sort of this very fresh opportunity as much as possible. So we want to give the bridge a lot of vegetation so that they can like not only suck the carbon dioxide, but also kind of purify the people itself that's kind of walking around in there. And because we feel that there's a necessity to kind of redefine like how the bridge is designed and how the bridge is thought of. It is to transport people, but it can also be used to like make people a lot more happier and energetic. Yeah. and these are sort of the conceptual phase we went through. The upper phase was done because, we thought, okay, so how do we get the people down there? So we thought, okay, maybe put like structure like right beside it, and the people presides down, and maybe have some cafes or restaurant behind it. But we kind of created a Ray Valley by doing that. So we we scratched that out, and so this was a advance, like kind of a second step through it. We have these steps for the people to climb on. So what we created is an intentional hill or mountainous sort of architecture for people to walk on. And what that does is that people can actually walk on these roofs and enjoy the grand view around in the big city, and also to the church itself. And I think the next image does a better job of doing that, right? So, well, it's not exactly on a hill, but you can.
There's one image like up here.
Yeah. So this image kind of lie a little bit, but there's like a real image that's in there. But as you can see, people can climb out there and look. And one of the things I don't know if we talked about is the river. Did we talk about the river?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, we just hope. Sorry, wrong way. Yeah, we believe that the ideas of this project will aid or assist the facilitation of forgiveness to change Tunisia to become an agent of change and healing in Rwanda. Thank you. Some finding issues.
I just have this is just a general